Hi BookTube, it's Emily. I'm back to give you my first update on the challenge I gave myself a couple of weeks ago to read all the books on the Children's Book Council of Australia Notables list for 2019. Now the CBCA have actually announced the shortlist for the Children's Book of the Year award already, and to be honest, if I'd known they were going to do that so soon after announcing the notables, I probably would have waited and just challenged myself to read the shortlisted books. But here we are, I have to read 40 books over 2 categories, and I'm not going to shift the goalposts now. The first of the 4 books I read was Between Us by Clare Atkins, which is a contemporary young adult novel about a young Iranian asylum seeker who is held in detention in Darwin in the Northern Territory, and the tentative friendship and then romance that forms between her and a boy at her school. It was an incredibly powerful novel. It is the sort of book that you just wish everyone could read. There were a lot of occasions where I kind of tended to think, well, obviously the book's going to make it seem worse than it is for drama. But then I reminded myself that no, actually this is what asylum seekers are being subjected to in Australia, and not just Australia, in 2019. And that was what made it extra powerful for me. It doesn't wrap things up with a nice bow at the end, but it ends the only way that it really can. And I was still thinking about this book several days later. The characters really got under my skin, and I wished there was something I could do for the people that these characters were inspired by. The second of the notables that I read was Small Spaces by Sarah Epstein, which was quite a change of pace after Between Us. Small Spaces is a young adult psychological thriller about a girl called Tash who remembers seeing her supposed imaginary friend lead a girl away from a fairground when they were both very young, but of course nobody believed her. Of course many years have passed and she thinks all that's behind her when she starts seeing the imaginary friend Sparrow turning up again. This had some really creepy moments in it, which was great. There was one night where I stayed up late reading it, and then when I went to the bathroom I was sort of keeping my back to the wall in case someone was there, kind of thing. That was the effect that it had on me. I did find it was a little bit long and the climax felt a little bit drawn out, so I didn't end up loving it quite as much as I had hoped, but if you're a fan of the thriller genre then I think you should check this one out. Also, just weird randomly, it is set around the area where I grew up, so that was equal parts cool and a bit weird. But overall, I quite enjoyed that. People don't set books there very often. The third book that I read for the challenge was Hive by A.J. Betts, which is about a young girl who lives in a community of a few hundred people. She's the beekeeper. Everybody has their role, everybody knows their place, until she doesn't. So Hayley, the main character, starts discovering anomalies within the community, starts questioning her own sanity, and then starts learning the truth about the community she lives in. This one, okay, I'm going to be honest, I think I was in a bit of a reading slump while I was reading it, so I was a bit impatient with it. Nothing seemed to be happening. I was expecting something a little bit more fast-paced, but that might have been my expectations, and often they are based on nothing, so that could be on me. Having said that, even though I basically read the whole book thinking, I'm not really into this, it's a bit boring, by the time I got to the end I was like, I want to read the next book, I want to know what's going to happen after this. So it ended on a high note and I am intrigued, so I guess it did its job in the end. The fourth book that I read for the challenge was actually an audiobook, so I'm going to hold it up on my phone and I'm sorry if you can't see it, but it was Catching Tella by Ambelin, Kwaymullina and Ezekiel, who are 2 Indigenous Australian authors. I actually wasn't a big fan of this one, and that puts me in quite a minority because most of the reviews are saying, oh my god, I loved this, it was fantastic, I read it in one sitting and all that sort of thing. I think part of it was actually I didn't like the audiobook and the way it was performed. One of the main characters, Tella, is supposed to be 15, but the way she was read made her come across as more about 11 or 12. She was really annoying. So even though she was going on an important journey, I just didn't care because she was really annoying. And with the other point of view character, Isabel Catching, that it was kind of the opposite extreme, that a lot of her chapters were read with barely any expression at all. It was literally just, I went over there, I did this, then I did this. And I was like driving along listening to this book and I was just like, oh my god, have an emotion. To be fair, given some of the things that Catching goes through, you could argue that the expressionlessness was a deliberate stylistic choice, but it just did not engage me with the book whatsoever. And so I think maybe this is one of those books where reading the print book might have been better than the audiobook. And sometimes that happens and it can't be helped. So these are the 4 books that I've read so far for this challenge, and a few brief thoughts on them. I'm not stopping here. I already have the next 2 books lined up to go. The first is Amelia Westlake by Erin Goff, which is about a hoax at a fancy private school, which I think goes too far, and the effects of that on the main characters and on the school community. And then after that I'll be reading Changing Gear by Scott Gardner, which is about a teenage boy who skips out on his final year of high school to go on a road trip. So I expect that's a coming of age style story. I don't really know anything about it. I've never heard of it before, so we'll see how that one goes too. I'll be back in maybe another couple of weeks with another update, and I'll let you know about those 2 and any others that I managed to read in that time. See you next time. Bye.